Good evening. This is Dwayne Todd. This is a video cast for the YouTube channel America the Beautiful. Today is the 26th of May. Yesterday marked the 1-year anniversary of the death of George Floyd at the hands of the Minneapolis Police Department, an event which led to the conviction on two different murder charges and a manslaughter charge for the officer, Derek Chauvin. It was a part of a year of the pandemic and great unrest racially and politically, and a year continuing trend of hate crimes in the United States, particularly hate crimes against Asian Americans, ostensibly because of the virus originating in China, and now an uptick in hate crimes against Jewish Americans, supposedly because of the bombing of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip by Israel. But I would remind that during the Charlottesville protest by right-wing, ultra-right-wing white supremacists, they marched with tiki torches chanting, "Jews will not replace us." And 2 years ago, there was a mass shooting at a synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. But over the weekend, a Jewish man in New York City in his 20s was attacked by several men and beaten. He survived the attack, but during the attack, one of the perpetrators uttered the phrase, "Hitler was right." During the insurrection on January 6th at the United States Capitol, one of the insurrectionists wore a black t-shirt with white lettering that said Camp Auschwitz. Auschwitz, of course, being one of the worst of the concentration camps operated by Nazi Germany, in which 6 million Jews and 1 million or so other ethnicities were systematically murdered, gassed, tortured, starved to death. I follow on Twitter the Holocaust Museum Twitter feed, and every day they will post the name of a person, when they were born, where they were from, how, and thereby how old they were, and in what concentration camp they were held, and their ultimate demise. The detail that they have is amazing. How did they have all of that detail? Because the Third Reich, the SS, who operated the concentration camps, kept that kind of record, detailed record of the people that they held and persecuted and tortured and starved and ultimately murdered. 6 million Jews, 1 million of other ethnicities. To the person who uttered the statement, Hitler was right, I say to you, Hitler was not right. Hitler was wrong, very wrong. As Germany was losing the war, he retreated to an underground bunker and took his own life. He was, as I said earlier, wrong on the grandest scale possible. And yet, 3 years ago, young white men, citizens of the United States of America, marching and shouting, Jews will not replace us. An insurrectionist storming the United States Capitol while the Congress was certifying the election results, wearing a t-shirt, Camp Auschwitz. Indeed, we live in a free land. We have certain guaranteed rights, freedom of speech being among those. But before we support or allow people to celebrate Hitler and what he did, I think it would be wise for us to consider what the liberating armies, the Allied forces, found when they liberated the concentration camps. Dwight D. Eisenhower, a 5-star general, the head of the commander of the Allied troops, later President of the United States for 8 years, kept a diary, and he was one of those present as concentration camps were liberated. This is what he wrote in his diary. The same day, April 12, 1945, I saw my first horror camp. It was near the town of Gotha. I have never felt able to describe my emotional reactions when I first came face to face with indisputable evidence of the Nazi brutality and ruthless disregard of every shred of decency. Up to that time, I had known about it only generally or through secondary sources. I am certain, however, that I have never at any other time experienced an equal sense of shock. I visited every nook and cranny of the camp because I felt it my duty to be in a position from then on to testify firsthand about these things in case there ever grew up at home the belief or assumption that the stories of Nazi brutality were just propaganda. Some members of the visiting party were unable to go through the ordeal. I not only did so, but as soon as I returned to Patton's headquarters that evening, I sent communications to both Washington and London, urging the two governments to send instantly to Germany a random group of newspaper editors and representative groups from the national legislatures. I felt that the evidence should be immediately placed before the American and British publics in a fashion that would leave no room for cynical doubt. That was in 1945. fearful that some in the homeland would come to believe the stories of Nazi brutality were just propaganda. In Charlottesville, Virginia, in 2017, Jews will not replace us. A mass shooting in a synagogue in Pittsburgh in 2019, and the beating of a Jewish man last weekend in New York City, where one of the perpetrators shouting, "Hitler was right." Later, Eisenhower wrote, "Of all these displaced persons, the Jews were in the most deplorable condition. For years, they had been beaten, starved, and tortured." Merle Miller quotes Eisenhower speaking on April 25, 1945, to the members of Congress and journalists who had been shown Buchenwald the day before. "You saw only one camp yesterday. There are many others. Your responsibilities, I believe, extend into a great field, and informing the people at home of these things like these atrocities is one of them. Nothing is covered up. We have nothing to conceal. The barbarous treatment these people received in the German concentration camps is almost unbelievable. I want you to see for yourself and be spokesman for the United States." As I have said in previous videocasts, I was born in the United States of America, in the heartland of this country, in the state of Missouri. I have been educated in this land. I have enjoyed the freedoms every citizen of America is entitled to. Indeed, at the Declaration of Independence, we are told that this nation is built upon the premise that all men are created equal. We have not always lived up to that grand statement, but we have continued to strive to overcome, to improve, to right that which was wrong. But in this time, we must be very attentive that we do not allow hate to fester and ultimately to boil over, jeopardizing all that we hold dear, whether we be Republican, Democrat, Independent, or have no interest in politics at all. If we allow a climate of hate to prosper and fester and boil over, we will all lose. I pray that it may never be so, but it is incumbent upon all of those of us who love freedom, love our families, love our communities, to take steps to ensure that where evidence exists of these things, we make it known, and we defend to the very end the rights of others to coexist peacefully in the United States of America. May it be so. Good evening.